going to talk about each of these groups in turns, but we're going to jump a bit around in some of them because of just of the way that the relationships work. So in terms of member rights and responsibilities, members have 3 key ongoing rights and responsibilities in a cooperative. They need to elect the board of directors, they need to appoint auditors for the financial statements, and they need to receive those financial statements yearly. And usually these ongoing rights are exercised through the annual general meeting structure, which the board must call for the membership approximately each year. It's every 15 months or so. Every 15 months after the very first one, and the first one you have 18 months after you incorporate to run it. So these are the critical ongoing functions around governance, and at a minimum, these are the rights that your members should be exercising on an ongoing basis for the cooperative. There may be other times that the membership comes together, but these are sort of a minimum set of requirements that your members should be expecting to do, and that they should be engaged in this process. In addition to these ongoing rights, the members also have the right to vote on a number of key decisions that may face the cooperative. And this list is what's outlined in the legislation. So, none of these things can happen in a cooperative unless the members consent. And so anything that comes down the pipe of this nature, and you can see that these are all pretty critical issues to a cooperative, merging with another cooperative, dissolving it, converting a co-op to another type of corporation, amending the bylaws or the articles of incorporation on your legal documents that incorporate your co-op as a business. The bylaws are your internal governing documents. So as you can see, these are pretty critical functions that define the co-op, who they are, and how it operates. And so the members have the ultimate confirmation vote on any of those items. So it's important to know that, this isn't a situation where the members aren't going to necessarily be aware of things like this, because they have to have the final say in these decisions. So a note on when we talk about voting, there is a particular way that this happens. So in Ontario, there is no proxy voting allowed for membership. So you can't write in your vote, you can't ask someone to vote on your behalf. So member votes must take place in person at a properly called meeting. So that means the notice has been called properly, and that meeting has been called by the board of directors. Some votes by a simple majority, which is 50% plus 1. And the big ones are, the 2 that require only a majority vote are the appointment of auditors and the removal of directors. All others that we've talked about, all the other ones on that list, are a 2/3 vote. So 2/3 of the members present at a proper meeting have to approve in order for those motions to pass around amalgamation, dissolving, changing of bylaws, etc. It is possible for a co-op to decide that they wish to have a higher threshold, that maybe 2/3 isn't enough to confirm a vote in certain cases, and the co-op can certainly define that they would wish to, say, have a 90% threshold or an 85% threshold instead of 2/3. And that's certainly their prerogative. What they can't do is define it lower than those thresholds. Those are protected by legislation. The one exception to the majority voting rule or the 2/3 rule is that is the election of directors, which doesn't take place in terms of a show of hands. It happens by secret ballot. So it is a different voting process for directors than it is for any other type of motion that a member is going to be involved in. And in reality, although these decisions do come forward to the membership for a vote, most of the legwork leading up to that point is done by board and staff. So, usually the drafting of the bylaws doesn't happen at an annual general meeting. Proposed bylaws are presented, which is usually done by the board, sometimes in conjunction with an outside expert like a lawyer or a co-op developer, or staff does some of that and presents it to the board. So, it's not as though the work to get to the motion is actually done at the meetings. In many cases, material is provided ahead of time so that the members vote, and a lot of that is done by the board and the staff. The board's responsibility is also to call those meetings, and they also need to legislatively provide enough notice. So it's a minimum of 10 days and no more than 50. And that's just to make sure that the process isn't being hijacked and that members have adequate time to get in, to the meeting and know about it. And so many of the needs for member votes are identified by the board and staff as a result of carrying out the business of the cooperative. They may realize that the bylaws need to be updated, or that certain things need to happen in order to allow the co-op to continue functioning the best way that it can. And so it's not as though the board isn't doing any work around these big decisions. And in fact, a lot of the behind-the-scenes work and most of the legwork is done by board and staff. And so the other question around is, we talked about this in the first, is, what else do directors do? And there was this phrase in the diagram around directors, which is oversee the management of the administration of the business and affairs of the cooperative. And that's actually in the legislation. And as you can see, management of the administration of business and affairs of the co-op could include almost anything, and it includes almost everything. And for the most part, practically, what this includes for the board is overseeing the co-op finances on a regular basis, planning for future needs, making any major fundraising or capitalizing decisions, maintaining property and assets on behalf of the cooperative, member relations and communications, hiring staff, et cetera, et cetera. And these types of decisions look quite different in different types of co-op sectors. So, maintaining the property and assets of a housing cooperative is going to be a much different sort of situation, a very important function for the board, whereas it might not be in a very small cooperative that doesn't own any property or major equipment. So it's important to know that some of this will change and will be dependent from sector to sector. And so, what does this look like in terms of the types of decisions that the board is making? The regular decisions that the board is making are approval and termination of members. And we get asked this question a lot. A lot of people are saying, how can we preserve the member character of our cooperative? What if somebody, there is no situation where a member is just coming in, dropping their fee, and you absolutely have to accept them as members. There is an approval and a termination process that allows the board to, on behalf of the members, maintain the proper member character of that cooperative to make sure that the member needs as a whole are being met. And so this is a very important function of the board. It's not necessarily just a rubber stamp of approving every member that comes through the door. Other key functions that the board is making on a regular basis, usually on a yearly basis, are the declaration of dividends and interest payments and the declaration of any patronage payments that are going to go out. They also need to call the annual general meeting on a yearly basis and any member meetings that are going to be held in addition to the annual general meeting. From a human resources perspective, making decisions around employment and performance review and any termination that may be required of the senior employee in a cooperative, and regular review and approval of financial statements and any decisions required around legal matters that face the cooperative. And so these are all mandated by the legislation that the board is responsible for these decisions. Now, Joy's question was around, what about the vision, the mission, and the values of a cooperative? Once those have been passed, do they need to go back to the membership? And the legislation is silent on that. From the legislation's perspective, because it doesn't involve money or lawsuits, there's really no need to legislate it. The mission and vision is not quite irrelevant from a legislation perspective, but almost. So this is more of a best practices sort of thing. There's certainly no requirement for the board to go back to the membership to have them decide on a new mission or a vision or a strategy, but it would be a very interesting case to try and have the board make that decision on behalf of a membership. I don't know of any cooperatives that don't go back to the membership to have mission and vision at least received and approved by the membership. The membership may have limited input in some cases due to practical concerns, getting input from everybody in a way that's meaningful for that process around changing mission or changing strategy, and can be quite challenging. But certainly I would recommend that in terms of maintaining the cohesion within the cooperative and the members understanding what they're there for, it's very important that they see any sort of proposed changes to the mission and vision, even if it's not legislatively mandated, that they do go back to the membership. So I would argue that from a best practices function, it would be, if not required, then very strongly recommended. And I'm not sure if that's the same in other jurisdictions or not. I would hazard a guess that it's not. Legislation usually restricts itself to issues around money, property, and tangible sorts of things, rather than mission and vision, even though they are critically important to the functioning of a cooperative.